My Ántonia. Book 1, Chapter 1. By Willa Cather. I first heard of Ántonia on what seemed to me an interminable journey across the great midland plain of North America. I was 10 years old then. I had lost both my father and mother within a year, and my Virginia relatives were sending me out to my grandparents who lived in Nebraska. I traveled in the care of a mountain boy, Jake Narpole, one of the hands on my father's old farm under the Blue Ridge, who was now going west to make work for my grandfather. Jake's experience of the world was not much wider than mine. He had never been in a railroad train until the morning when we set out together to try our fortune in a new world. We went all the way to day coaches, becoming more sticky and grimy at each station of the journey. Jake had bought everything the newsboys offered him: candy, oranges, brass collar buttons, a watch charm, and for me, A Life of Just James, which I remember as one of the most satisfactory books I ever read. Beyond Chicago, we were under the protection of a friendly passenger conductor who knew all about the countries in which we were going and gave us a great deal of advice in exchange for our confidence. He seemed to us an experienced and worldly man who'd been almost everywhere. In his conversation, he threw out lightly the names of distant states and cities. He wore the rings and pins and badges of different fractal orders in which he belonged. Even his cuff buttons were engraved with harmonics, and he was more inscribed than an Egyptian obelisk. Once he sat down to chat, he told us that in the immigrant car ahead, there was a family from across the water whose destination was the same as ours. They can't any of them speak English except one she's not much older than you, 12 or 13 maybe? She's as bright as the new dollar. Don't you want to go ahead and see her, Jimmy? She's got the prettiest brown eyes too. This last remark made me bashful. I shook my head and settled down to just James. Jake nodded at me approvingly and said, "You are likely to go get diseases from foreigners." I do not remember crossing the Missouri River or anything about the long day's journey through Nebraska. Probably at the time I had crossed so many rivers that I was dull to them. The only thing very noticeable about Nebraska that it was still as day-long Nebraska. I had been sleeping, curled up in a red plush seat, for a long time when we reached Blackhawk. Jake roused me and took me by the hand. We stumbled down from the train to a wooden sitting where men were running with lanterns. I couldn't see any town or even distant lights. We were surrounded by utter darkness. The engine was panting heavily from its long run. In the red glow on the firebox, a group of people stood huddled together on the platform, encumbered by bundles and boxes. I knew this must be the immigrant family the conductor had told us about. The woman wore a fringed shawl tied over her head, and she carried a little tin truck in her arms, hugging it as if it were a baby. There was an old man, tall and stooped. 2 half-grown boys and a girl stood holding oilcloth bundles, and a little girl clinging to her mother's skirt. Presently, a man with a lantern approached them and began to talk, shouting and exclaiming. I pricked my ears up, for it was possibly the first time I ever heard a foreign tongue. Another lantern came along. A buskering voice called out, "Hello, are you Mr. Burton's folks?" "If you are, it's me you're looking for. I'm Oda Funks. I'm Mr. Burton's hired man, and I'm here to drive you out. Hello, Jimmy. Aren't you scared to come so far west?" I looked up with interest at the new face in the lantern light. He might have stepped out the pages of a Jesse James. He wore a sombrero hat and a wide leather band and bright buckles. At the end of his mustache were twisted up like little horns. He had looked lively and ferocious. I thought, as if he had a history. A long scar ran from one cheek and drew up the corner of his mouth into a sinister curl. The top of his left ear was gone, and his skin was brown as the Indians. Surely this was the face of a desperado. He walked from the platform in his high-heeled boots, looking for our trucks. I saw that he was rather a slight man, quick and weary, and light on his feet. He told us that we had a long night drive ahead of us and had better be on the hike. He led us to a hitching bar where 2 farm wagons were tied. I saw the foreign family crowding into one of them. The other was for us. Jake on the front row seat with autofungus. I rode on the straw in the bottom of the wagon, covered up with buffalo hide. The immigrants ruffled up into the empty darkness, and we followed behind them. I tried to go to sleep, but the jolting made me bite my tongue, and I began to ache all over. When the straw settled down, I had a hard bed. Cautiously, I slipped from under the buffalo hide, got up on my knees, and peered over the side of the wagon. There seemed to be nothing to see, no fence, nor creek, or trees, no hills or fields. If there was a road, I could not see it. I could not make it out on the faint starlight. There was nothing but land, not a country at all, but the material out of which countries are made. No, there was nothing but land and slightly undulating. I knew because often our wheels ground against the brakes as we went down into a hollow and lurching up again on the other side. I had the feeling that the world was left behind and that we got under the edge of it, and we were outside man's jurisdiction. I had never before looked up at the sky when there was not a familiar mountain ridge against it, but this was the complete doom of heaven. All there was of it. I did not believe that my dead father and mother were watching me from up there. They would be looking